Okay, let's look at another relatively basic example of graphing a sine or a cosine. Here we're graphing a cosine, and all we have is a new amplitude and a new period. We're not going to have a phase shift or a vertical shift. We don't have a C or a K. All right, so we always start the same. Our amplitude is absolute value of A. A here is the number in front multiplying the sine or the cosine. So absolute value of 5, of course, is just 5. Our new period, that looks ugly. Our new period is always 2 pi over b. B is the number multiplying x. So 2 pi over 2 pi. Our phase shift, I'm just going to abbreviate that PS, is always negative C over B. C is 0. There's no plus 2 inside. There's no plus something or minus something. So C is 0. 0 divided by anything is 0. And our vertical shift, moving the whole graph up or down, there's nothing added or subtracted outside. Phase shift, C. So C is not the phase shift, but C is what's added or subtracted inside. K is what's added or subtracted outside the parentheses. Nothing here, K equals 0. No vertical shift, so that's going to mean our midline is still the x-axis. Okay, we do our start and end. Always write these out. People that actually write out start and end to get these right. People that don't tend not to. So 2x equals 0. 2x equals 2 pi. It's always inside this equal to 0, equal to 2 pi for sine and cosine. We get to tangent and cotangent, things change. But for sine, cosine, and secant and cosecant, it's always inside equals 0, inside equals 2 pi. So here we get x equals 0. 0 divided by 2 is 0. Divide both sides by 2, we get x equals pi. Remember a check here. This should always equal, the start will always equal your phase shift. So this is just a second way. It's a check that's built in. And end minus start should always equal the period. Pi minus 0 does equal pi. Check. Okay, we find our x scale. Our x scale was always the period over 4. So my period was pi. I want pi over 4. That's what I'm going to be counting by. And in my recommendation here, now that we got our period, we look at all these guys here that we've got circled, and we make sure they all have the same denominator. Our life is going to be much easier if we're always counting by the same units here. So let's think of this period as 4 pi over 4. Same with our end. So that's really pi over 1. I multiply top and bottom by 4. And 0, of course, is just 0. Okay, we draw a nice pretty sine wave. But we're graphing cosine, you say. Yeah, but they have the same graph. They're just scooted over. They just start at different places. It's the same shape. For sine and cosine, we're always going to draw basically the same graph. The only thing that changes is where we start or end. Okay, so we draw a nice pretty sine wave, draw several cycles. Because there was no vertical shift, my midline comes right through the middle. That's the x-axis. Okay, now we got to think, what's the graph of cosine look like? So recall, y equals cosine looks like this. Here's one period. That's a pi. There's one period of cosine. Cosine starts and ends at crests. Sine starts and ends at intercepts. This is what sine looks like. Cosine starts at a crest. So really, for the first time graphing here, I care whether this is sine or cosine. All the rest of this, everything would have been the same whether it was sine or cosine. Because I have a cosine, my start is at one of the crests. And pick one, it doesn't matter. I could pick any of these crests. I'm going to pick this one because it's kind of in the middle. There's my start. Then at the end of that cycle, here, let me do this in a different color. So here's a start, all the way down, all the way back up. That's one complete period. This will be my end. That's what we're doing with start and end, is figuring out how to label the beginning and end of that one period. And we just picked any one. We could have picked this one. We could have picked this one. I know how to label those. 0 and 4 pi over 4. Start, end. Wait, 0 was something special. That's the y-axis. Whenever you come across x equals 0, you have found yourself the y-axis. I know how to label all my important points. Remember, in each period, you're going to label 4 important points. Your crests, your troughs, and your intercepts. So I've labeled that. I need to label here, here, and here. That's 4 in one period. And then this guy is starting the next period. So here I'll do those in a different color. Here, maybe red. These 4 would be in the next period. And here, maybe I'll do a different color. These 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 would be in a period going backwards. Okay, and we know how to label those because we're counting by this. This is what I put on my scale. I'm counting by pi over 4s. Don't let the pi throw you off. We're just going 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. We're just counting by 4s. So this would be 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, and then look what would have happened next. 4 pi over 4. That's how I know I got it right. If you're counting along and something doesn't match up right, you've done goofed. Okay, let's go backwards 1. So I'm at 0, going backwards by fourths, -1, -2 pi over 4, -3 pi over 4, and -4 pi over 4. And I could keep labeling forever if I wanted to, but I'm pretty content as long as I label one complete cycle on either side of the y-axis. But if you want to keep going, we could. I could say here 5 over 4, 6 pi over 4, 7 pi over 4. I could just keep going if I wanted to. And that's a good place to stop.